Hi everyone, I'm LeiLani Cauthen. I'm the CEO of the Learning Council, News, Media, and Research. I'm also the publisher. And I am also an Edujedi Grand Master, which is like a kind of a big deal. It's the big new leadership society group that keeps growing and growing beyond all our ability to keep track of it all. And this is our 22nd meeting about what the Edujedi have been working on all year. And for several years. We came out with a dictionary quite a few years ago, and it keeps leveling up. It started out with 76 definitions. Now it's like well over 200. So this activity today is going to be about UI, user interface, and user UX, user experience, digital learning experience standards, which are in the Edujedi dictionary. And we want to pay attention to affordances versus flat, because we know that true engagement isn't just a PDF, right? So with that said, let me give you a little intro. We're going to have Sandra Paul with us, our good friend from New Jersey. Dr. Barbara Nesbitt has already joined us, Assistant Superintendent for Technology Services from Pickens County School District. Super excited to have you talk today. And then Sara Mungall, who's the Executive Director of Curriculum and Technology from University of U Academy. I think we're tracking them down right now. And Dr. Wendy Oliver, who's the Chief Learning Officer from EdisonLearning. Now, Edison was kind enough to sponsor all of our activities this year because they can actually help also bring in the professional grade view of what's going on with people who are out there doing commercial grade software and providing that professional user interface, user design thing, in contrast to kind of what's maybe going on in a lot of the schools. So for just a little minute here before I have Barbara pipe up and give us all the colorful what happened to them and how they're doing right now, I want to have Dr. Wendy Oliver give us a little overview. I know Keeley is with us too, and she's going to pop on to actually do some screen share of what's going on in their system. There's a lot of stuff to show. But Wendy, over to you. Give us a little color about Edison first off.
First of all, LeiLani, thank you so much for allowing us to participate today. I've learned so much on all these sessions, and it's just been a blast getting to talk with everyone and hear what everyone's doing. To tell you a little bit about EdisonLearning, we have been around for approximately 30 years, believe it or not, which sounds crazy when you think about online learning. And we have about 150 courses. And those courses are licensed as content only, but probably I would say our secret sauce is that we also have an instructional services team who I've had the privilege to work with. And those teachers are licensed in multiple states, and we partner with districts. Sometimes districts don't have a certified teacher in a certain area. Sometimes students need to take a course that the district doesn't offer. Sometimes students just need a different environment to take a course. So, we work very closely as a district's partner. And again, that's probably our secret sauce is our instructional team. We also have guidance counselors on our staff to help with SEL. We have our digital content that we've developed in-house. And like you said, we're going to show some of the examples of that commercial grade today, especially around UI and UX. It's really exciting. I have an amazing team in product development, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some examples today to put some visuals with some of the terms that we're going to talk about. So I'm really looking forward to it today.
Right, and there's Keeley. Yeah, so Keeley, you're going to do some screen share, actually define affordances and stuff like that in a little bit. But I want to start off with our good friend Barbara about kind of what's going on in Pickens, and then dovetailing maybe into your story about what's going on with your digital resources.
Right, so it's wonderful to be here, a privilege, and thank you so much for having me here today. I always learn so much from my participation in your events. Here in the school district of Pickens County, I felt like we walked into COVID probably more ready than a lot of school districts because we have been given a lot of attention to our digital ecosystem over a period of time. So we had a single sign-on in place, we had a learning object repository, we had a learning management system, and we had a video conferencing solution. And all of these kind of tools were already in place. We walked into COVID with 1-to-1 in grades 3 through 12, and we were 1-to-4 in early childhood. So we pulled all of those devices and were able to send them home with second grade, but we could not go 1-to-1 with our early childhood until we received some of the CARES Act funding, and then we were able to do so early on into the 2021 school year. So I'm going to share some of those lessons that we've learned as we go through, especially around having some teachers who are just pros at teaching digitally and had years of digital content built. And then we had our early childhood teachers who were used to teaching with technology was a small part of a center, and they were never one-to-one. And then all of a sudden they had to learn Schoology. So we had newbies walking this road with us along with some real pros, right? And just what a reminder it is that we had a small group of teachers who really were, like many of the others in the country, where maybe they weren't quite as prepared or ready. So we had a lot that we had to learn as well about supporting teachers and young learners. I would also like to say, at some point, I'd like to say, I don't know if you know that the state of South Carolina has adopted Safari Montage as a learning object repository, and we're in the process of writing, curating objects and writing lessons that can be shared out over a period of years. Because I think if there's one thing that we learned in COVID is that it's an unrealistic expectation for teachers to build all of their digital curriculum by themselves.
That's like an understatement of the century. We know this. In January, our study said 75% of teachers were overwhelmed or burnt out. And
yes.
That was a large part of it because they didn't have to do that before. Well, they were always building lessons, right, Barbara? But maybe not so much, like.
Well, it's a different user, when you think of the user interface in a classroom and the user experience in a physical classroom, it's different when you go remote. And so it's different when there's, blended learning and different access to tools and resources. So I'm glad that you're bringing the spotlight to the need for this, because we have got to give teachers a much larger set of digital resources, not just tools, but actually developed curriculums that they can tweak and customize and make their own. Not saying we don't trust them to build, we absolutely do, but they need time. And you can't expect a brand new teacher to walk in and just start building. It's just unrealistic.
So true. We just had that conversation about how prescriptive you should be with Chicago Public and some of the Ohio schools just the other day. And I think more and more people are seeing what you're seeing. They're starting to say, we need to lean in and just give, not just go, hey, it's all up to you. Good luck with your bad self,
Yeah.
Like,
I
okay.
agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And we're going to ask for a lot more from you as we go along, but it looks like Sandra just joined us. Hi, Sandra.
Hi. Sorry about that. Somehow I just couldn't get in. How's everything going? Everybody doing?
Sometimes that happens. Yeah, I'm on I don't know how many platforms, and I'm like, do I got to wear a headset on this one, or how is my audio going to work on that one? It's kind of wild. Well, it's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. Well, we would like to hear a little background on what's been going on with you in your district. And then we'll dig right into the whole subject here about, the user interface, user experience.
Well, in our district, we, just like everybody else, the pandemic hit. And then when, everybody moved to remote learning, I'll call it that because it definitely wasn't virtual learning. But anyhow, or whatever you want to call it, actually. And then as we started back in September, we also actually still continued in that method of instruction until March of this year, when we started to do a slow rollout of everybody kind of returning back to school. We never did quite return everybody to school at the same time. Everybody returned to school, but it wasn't done at the same time. We had cohorts. So there was a cohort that came to school on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then there was another cohort that came Thursdays and Fridays to school. Our teachers were doing hybrid instruction, which was extremely stressful and very hard. We actually had some of the technology available so that they could do it, but I'm not going to tell you that it was done in a method or in a way that was really conducive for really learning, how kids really learn. But they, we did the best what we could at the time. And now starting this September 2021, everybody's in school. There's no virtual school in the state of New Jersey. So because of that, everybody is basically in their buildings. So that's what we've been going through. One of the things that did happen that I thought was great, but some people don't think it did. One of the things was the whole aspect of technology and the importance of it for education. I think that that became a limelight. I also think what was great also was that finally somebody is hearing that there is a problem with the inequity of access, inequity of devices, inequity of information, and finally it's being heard. And because it's being heard and everything else, I think that, not that I would ever want anyone to think that the pandemic was a great thing, but I just think it was finally, it brought up certain things that I have been talking about for 22 years, I think. I've been doing this, so it finally brought to light some issues that we need to work on. And I won't say it's completely resolved, but I would say we're moving in the right direction. Let's put it that way.
It's fabulous. Yeah, we'd heard from some of the New York, New Jersey superintendents earlier in the year, and definitely they have the wildest time and space use now with this, staging. You can start the school year now, and then you can only be in this side of the building as this cohort, the other cohort has to go on the other side of the building, and AB days, AB weeks. It was wild. I mean, just what your state put out was 5 or 6 different major models. So we were like, what? Yeah, so proud of you for surviving it all. You look fabulous. So somehow it's all
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like we should dig into what we're going to be talking about here and see if Sara joins us along the way, or we pull in some of our other attendees to maybe share and show and tell as we go. I do have Sandra, Dr. Wendy Oliver, and Keeley on here. They're from EdisonLearning, because we're going to be talking a little bit about what the pro-grade world is doing, the professional commercial world, as an example of quality directing of attention digitally, which is kind of, the major thing. So when we talk about in the dictionary, when we talk about digital learning experience standards, there's the certain part of, is your digital still really manual? Is it flat? And like we came up with, how to define flat a couple of years ago, which is basically, are all the teachers just using like links out to History Channel and PDFs? What's happening? Because that's not digital, that's digitized. So an affordance, obviously, is something that is in the schema of the software that allows you to poke it or manipulate it. Like, what does this button do is an affordance, the affordance of the button, the affordance of the software, right? So the issues we really want to focus in on is having to do with the user interface, user experience, and that whole thing about it becoming more standardized as an operational basis for your school to think with these dynamics. So I'm going to go over to the actual standards so we can start ripping through them. Can you guys see this? User interface design elements? Okay, so number one is just like all those dictionary definitions are in the other parts of the dictionary. So we started our last session sort of talking about these first several about digital learning experience. So I kind of want to skip down into some of the later ones that have to do with that affordance or non-affordance. And, Barbara and Sara, what I'm hoping to hear from you is kind of like, are your people thinking with this stuff at all? Like, do they go this deep? Are the teachers aware that there's issues in these things? Because these are supposed to be things that you think with to say, I'm not doing that if it's not doing it this way, right? I'm not using that software. I'm walking away. So things like apps providing G here, non-fixed sizing, apps are inspected for unclear call to action buttons, duplicates, unnecessary bifurcation. That means a 7-year-old comes up in the software and they can go this direction with the button, or they can go this direction, and they tend to go lost into the ether, costing your teachers enormous amounts of time to herd those cats, right? We all know this happens, right? Even with logins, remember prior to SSO, what would happen with kids? Teachers were losing their minds. So it's these sorts of things. So I'm going to stop there and say to Barbara and Sara, do you want me to have Keeley do some show and tell now, or do you want to just go and talk about these first?
It's your call. We can do whatever.
I think it will really help you guys answer the issues you know of if we have her share. So go ahead, Keeley, take the screen.
All right. So I'll just kind of go over a few things that Wendy and I had talked about when we were looking through some of these standards and some of the terms. We noticed that quite a few of them overlap. So hopefully this will be kind of a good introduction, and then we'll promote some good discussion among everyone afterward. One of the first things that stood out to me was letter I, that specifically discussed the coloring and shading and contrasting elements for ease. So one example I have here in this first screenshot, this is our Informational and Persuasive Writing Critical Concepts course, which is designed for high school students. And as you can see, this is our first unit that they enter. As students go through each lesson, the lesson that they're currently progressing through is bolded and highlighted in this yellow-orange color. So students know where they picked up, where they can pick up after they left off, especially as they get further in that unit. That's super helpful. And then if they're anything like me, I always appreciate the rest of these lessons are grayed out, which means that the students cannot access them until they've passed the passing threshold set by the school.
So they're gated.
Yes.
They're gated, yeah.
Yes, so they're gated. It's the forced progression. But where I find this as a learner super helpful is it also gives me a preview of how much left I have to do. So a lot of our learners are asynchronous. If they know that they have a certain deadline or a big project coming up or something, this kind of also helps them plan their time out accordingly. And then another image that I have that kind of shows how we contrast these elements and help with user interface and understanding. This is when the student gets into the end of the lesson. So you can see they've completed the essential instruction, which is the lesson as a whole. And then they went to take our lesson assessment. But unfortunately, the student did not pass. It is grayed out. So this institution has set the passing score at greater than 60%. So in addition to kind of having that visual indicator that the student needs to do some more work in this lesson, they also can see the numerical score there. And then afterwards, it lights up green. So the student was able to go back and complete the Reteach learning object, which is kind of our remediation. And then they get that visual indicator that they've passed. And again, the numerical is there as well.
Keeley, I just want to compare and contrast just for a second. Hold up. Because in the LMS world, it's normally not, like if a teacher builds a learning management system lesson, it's a dump, right? Like they put everything in there and then instructions on what the student should be doing to each thing. Like go read this now, and it's all attached, basically, right? So the visual sequencing is not this. Barbara, am I right about that? It's not the same in an LMS.
No, it's not the same as like a commercialized platform like this where you have a full course. But as like we use Schoology, and there are many features of really good LMS platform that allow you to gate, that have integrated LTI links, so the kids are staying within the platform. So whether they're on a Chromebook or their phone, it's not going out to another tab and opening up in Safari or something other app on their device.
Yeah.
So I think as you need to get in and train teachers on how to use the features when they're developing lessons inside of an LMS. And we use a mix of both commercial products as well as our teachers using their learning management system. So that, but if they're using their LMS, and like for us for Schoology, they have ways of saying they can't progress to the next lesson until they like pass this one, or they interact with this video, or they get this score. So there are things that you can do to set that up. It's probably never going to be the same as the look that you can get though from a commercial product.
And one thing I would add is you can get that user experience in the LMS, right? A teacher can with the functionality, but I think it's the interface design and the user interface that you really lose from the commercial grade, because, and I've done both, right? I've done in the classroom, and then I've had the privilege of working with software designers and graphic artists, and you just don't have those resources at the district level. And they're the ones that can make it pretty, right? You know, when I was in the classroom, and I was always looking for someone to make mine look pretty, and there were some teachers who just had the ability to make theirs look a lot prettier than I did. My content was great, but I never could make it look pretty, right? And that is the benefit of that commercial grade, I think, is really it's the interface and that design that makes it so different.
Yeah, and I think that we can learn a lot from commercial grade just to teach teachers about how they should be thinking in terms of directing attention digitally for student navigation, even if you're sort of like in your LMS world. Okay, so hold on, because Keeley, I'm coming back to you to finish, because you did something. So be ready for this. You did something to say about contrast. I want you to come back to contrast. But before that, we have Sandra already with us, but Sara, you just joined, right? I can't see you for some reason. My screen not showing her. Hi.
I did just join. Can you see me?
I can see you. I had to like toggle because I have a limited window or something. I don't know why.
Yeah, no problem. There was a problem with my registration, so I'm trying to play a little bit of catch up to figure out where you guys are in the conversation.
Well, we're like digging into the meaningfulness of UI UX. So Edison is on as a commercial grade partner to kind of show at that level what commercial grade is doing, because there's lessons to be learned, like even if you're not using commercial grade. So let's just stop for a second though, and the Barbara and Sandra already gave a little background. Can you give us a little background on you and your school and kind of what's been happening?
Yes, yes, ma'am. So I'm from University View Academy. We are actually a fully virtual school. We have been virtual for way prior to pandemic. We have about 3,700 students in grades K through 12, and we have utilized a whole assortment of different. So when we're talking about this, we did purchase curriculum, and we've actually been shifting away from that now to our state standard of what we qualify as tier 1, or what's best for students, that kind of high quality curriculum. And we've actually been working on converting that to a digital component. And so these conversations are very familiar for my department. Sorry, I do, with our department, I oversee the technology team and the curriculum team. So they kind of go hand in hand, which is interesting for us because you wouldn't normally think about those two going together. But we really utilize both of those to kind of make sure that we're giving students a high quality curriculum, and then also looking at the delivery of that curriculum in a virtual space and how best to engage students. So does that answer your question a little bit? Or
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're perfect for the UI UX discussion, because it's a, how you execute is not a content only question anymore. So that's perfect. Okay, so coming back then to Keeley for a second, you said something about contrast, which I don't think we can understate, because it has to do with special needs people who can't see green or red, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, even though there are these color indicators as well, even the shading itself, obviously this would appear brighter. And then the border as well around it, it's thicker and black. So, there's other ways to definitely be able to tell, like these are grayed out. As you'll notice, the stars also appear once the student enters the lesson, which is another thing that indicates that the student is in progress. And you'll see on the other lessons on that page, there aren't stars available, which means that lesson has not been started and is not able to work through quite yet. So
I have a question.
So also the size of the affordances, like they're big. They're not like tiny little links in 8-point font.
yes.
All right.
Okay.
I had a question though. One of the things that I know that sometimes I do understand the trying to be as much controlling as possible, but one of the things that if a student has to relearn, like you were talking about slide 2, where you had the 60%. Could you bring that up for a second? Right. So you have, and they go back through or whatever it is. Is it going back to pick up, like one of the things that I actually was looking at recently was, is it picking up what they did not get, or is it picking up, or do they have to go through the entire process? Number one. But number two, okay, are there additional resources that they could use? Because one of the things that's about this kind of thing, looking at this, is that it looks very text-based, or, some like things like that. And one of the things, like even for one of my grandsons, he's not keen on reading a book if it's text, but he'll read a graphic novel in a heartbeat. So because of that, that's one of the reasons I asked, because either could it be like a graphic novel, could it be like, say, for instance, some sort of video that shows the content or something like that. So if you have a kid that gets 60%, then is there a way that it can go back and then give them several options of, okay, maybe you didn't get it text, but can you get it video? Can you get it this way? Can you get it that way? And be able to, and then the kids do, so they get to that 100%, hopefully not in green, but the 100%.
Yes. In I guess the simple way to answer this would be, so the way that our system is set up, after the student gets this less than passing score, whatever the threshold is that the individual school or district has set for the student, they are automatically redirected back to what we call the Reteach page. So this is your remediation, and I had the slides a little bit later, but I can actually maybe scoop down to here. So our Reteach pages vary in what the content is being taught, what we're expecting the students to learn, and what we want them to achieve. So for example, in the Reteach page, this example that I'm going to show you, the students are writing an expository essay. And we all know that ELA, I've taught it and I've been a content writer for several years now, is already text-based and text-heavy by nature. It just is. So we had the task of thinking, okay, if we have a student who's not getting this through lesson text, what are some other ways that we can help them understand this? So I'm not going to play the entire thing, but let me see if I can get this to load here. We used Camtasia and have created some videos. So let me just
There's also interactive stuff. I've seen your puzzles, right?
Yes, and I had one of those too. So let me see if I can share this window here. So I'm just going to click through because this is quite a lengthy video.
We've been following the work of Anita, a student who is writing her expository essay on the positive effects of playing video games. In this video, you will see how Anita approaches the task of writing the first draft of the body paragraphs for her essay by using the outline she created in the previous step of the writing process.
So I'm just going to kind of play that introduction, but basically there is that narration. So students who do prefer to learn in an auditory way can benefit from that. And then we also have closed captioning available on our videos as well. And then the video just basically goes through using Microsoft Word and exactly how a student would take their outline and turn it into a first draft. So it's more of a step-by-step remediation. So students who maybe didn't quite get the first explanation, this breaks it down a lot more to help that student be more successful. And then the other type of thing that we were just referencing would be our storyline activities. And they would look something like this. So this is going to be more for your kinesthetic hands-on learners. And this is just one example, but it's in the same unit on writing the expository essay. So this student is in the final stages and they're trying to figure out how this paragraph functions. So what this does is give them a sample paragraph and then breaks it down. And then the student can then decide, okay, is this a topic sentence? Is this showing evidence? Is this showing the analysis of the evidence? How is this functioning in the paragraph? And then when students are done, they hit submit and it will give them automatic feedback and kind of let them know if they're good to move on, if they've mastered that part of the lesson, or if they need to go back and review some of the material. So hopefully
Fun. So click around. So fun. Yeah. So Sandra, so in other words, like, yeah, multi-directional. But this is the point about what teachers need to be taught, right? When you're moving to digital, is that they're thinking with this level of pro grade design
Right.
branching is what you're saying, right, Sandra? Because
It's like the difference between PowerPoint and Prezi.
yeah,
And that's the things. So it's funny because one of the things, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Sorry. Let me
no, it's good.
make your statement. I'm sorry about that.
I want to hear your statement. I was done.
Well, one of the things that was interesting is that, we're talking about LMSs and stuff like that. So I know right now we're piloting another brand, Canvas. We're piloting it in the high school. And to me, one of the things I think it's kind of missing is that to me, it's too linear. I would rather see it a little bit less linear, but as everybody knows, I don't have the funding to get a programmer to kind of redo it and make it as custom for our community as possible. So we're trying to use it and see the best we can. But one of the things that I do see as sometimes an issue, like actually a few seconds ago, I just read an email. I have a student who actually has a vision issue, and the problems that they're talking about, has to do with some of the, like how you have the green button there. That was one of the things. Also making sure about one of the things that also has been a problem with this person that I'm talking to. She has an eye degenerative disease. And one of the things that's happening is that making sure not only the colors, but also how, it's almost like, say, for instance, one of the things they made sure about was that we have to make sure that it's almost like everything has to be black and white. We have to be very careful about using certain colors and stuff like that. So, and each kid is different and each child is different, but then trying to get the teacher to understand that is also a completely different ballgame, and making sure that the technology is actually working for the student. And one of the things that I find that sometimes becomes an issue with a teacher is that sometimes the teacher does something like put this before the kid and then tells the kid, well, go through it. And I'm like, that's not how this is supposed to work. And, and I also like the idea of that you give different methods of learning it, because the other side of it too also is that one of the things we've all come to realize is that how you come up with the number 4 by using 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 by using the numeric 2 plus 2. I may not learn it that way. I might need to use 2 apples plus 2 apples, which gives me 4 apples. You know what I mean? And I think making sure that we have teachers understanding that flexibility of how students learn is part of what I'm trying to get across. Because I think,
yeah, that's a great one. That's a great takeaway, Sandra, because what you're saying is all UI UX, and we need to put this into the dictionary now, needs to acknowledge the disparity in learning. What's the word for it? How people learn.
right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I love that. I love that. Okay, so I'm making a note. We're gonna have to recognize that. Okay, so Keeley, couple more minutes. Show us what else you were going to show us, and then let's get back to having all these educators talk really about the actual standards.
Yeah, sure. So I think what we were just discussing leads really well into the next screenshot I had and talking about people's preferred learning styles. So that's another thing too. Our students come from diverse backgrounds. Some of them are working jobs. Some of them, do have IEPs. It's just like a traditional brick and mortar classroom. You have to consider all the different learners that you have that you may encounter and who may be using your product. So one of the things that I really like about our LMS is that we do have tools made available to students, but we're not forcing them to use them. So all of our students are onboarded with a Cyber Essentials course and are basically taught the main layout of how to use the LMS. But then, the teacher is also able to help remind them when these tools are available. So one example would be the quick nav, which is the bar over here indicated by the red arrow. And when students click that, this window will pop up. So students know in any of their courses, I believe this is set up for every subject area the same way, They can go here to access the forum, the calculator, if they're in math. If they would prefer to go into the traditional view of the course, which is a little less colorful and more text-based, they can do that for whatever reason they would need to. If they need to message their teacher, they can do that. And then they will have to click out of the quick nav to go back into the lesson when they're finished. And then we also have some other tools that are available, which are up here in, oh, sorry, go ahead.
These are all what we would call affordances simplicity, right?
Yes.
So your tools are
Mhm.
easily afforded without you backing out of that system, going over to some other system, having 18 windows open. Barbara, I know you're nodding your head on this. Like
Mhm.
kids with 18 windows open, what is happening?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna all talk about that in a second. Go ahead, Keeley.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it really prevents the distractions. And then another thing I just wanted to highlight was, again, up at this top toolbar next to the lesson title, these icons are also consistent. So we do have text to speech available. So if you do have a student that would prefer to learn that way, or maybe has a learning disability, they know that they can go there, click in the text to speech, and it will bring up a menu that will read the lesson text to them. Even all of our images have alternate tags so that when the student gets to the image, it gives them a description of what is being shown. So they know if they can't see it or are kind of confused of what they're looking at, that description is given to them. Another one that I really like is the notepad. I'm sure all of us on this call have taken notes in different ways throughout our years. I know some students really prefer to take notes in the system. It's right there. So this notepad function is available. However, other students I know are more traditional, I guess you would call it, and prefer to take pen and paper or highlight so they can also print, or they can copy and paste and put it into something like Word or Google Docs if that's how they prefer to do it. And then lastly, we just have this other toolbar as well, which again, they're there, but they're not in the student's face. So it's an option for them if they choose to use it. The student has the ability to go through and use things like highlight, underline. Whenever there's images, sometimes we'll do a matching activity in our reviews. Those lines and shapes become available. So students can choose to interact in the way that they see fit and that best meets their learning styles.
That's perfect. So embedded WYSIWYG, right? Like that's not in everything. Okay, cool. So let's go back. If that's okay with Keeley, I'm going to go back and look and show the actual standards so we can work our way through a few more of them in open discussion. But I'm coming back first to Barbara. Your comments on this so far in terms of UI UX and the takeaways.
I think that for teachers, there are some basic things that we can help them understand that are really, really critically important. One of the things that we realized when we started into COVID was even just within our LMS was the lack of consistency in how foldering systems were done and labeled and named, even within the same school. And so that was something that we addressed when we came back into the 1920-21 school year to make things easier for our kiddos to find and for their parents to find, and pulling together like some teams of teachers to decide what are some good schemas for how we're going to present this in K through 2 and then 3 through 5. And then once we got into middle and high school, a lot of it was very more subject specific, but that was extremely helpful. Even things that prior folders, like they didn't hide them, but they might move them like down on the bottom of the page to the current work is at the top of the page. So that's like one of the things, but the integrations within teaching teachers how to use integrations and the advanced features of an LMS, I think are so helpful. For example, in Schoology, you can integrate Google, so Google assignments, and the teachers can do rubrics and actually grade right there inside of Google while the kids are in Google. So the kids are in Google and the teacher, they don't know they're in Google, though they look like it's in Schoology. It's also integrated for them. They're not in another window. And the teacher can look at their site and click on different names and actually comment on kids' papers while they're in real-time writing. So those are some of the things that when we show some of these more advanced features to our teachers, they realize that they can make their learning more engaging and provide feedback. And one of the things that our friends at EdisonLearning know is how critical that feedback piece is. And so they embed that into their lessons. but teachers can do some of those same things within the features of the LMS as well. So I think giving that more real-time feedback through the integrations that you have and the ability to do that are just so critically important. But it really does go back, doesn't it, to spending time with teachers and professional learning and supporting them. And so how do we teach, how do we get help to our teachers so that they can in turn help each other? You know, we talked about having curriculum that we give to them, some purchase, maybe some district or state developed, you know, created in-house. We actually paid teachers to develop playlists with videos where they taught lessons and they had activities. We put these playlists in Safari Montage and labeled them based on the quarters and when they were taught based on our pacing guide. And then they can easily just put that playlist right into Safari Montage and then do other things with them. And we found when we started doing some district created content that our use of these things just skyrocketed. And so I think that's a combination of teaching your teachers how to be independent with the tools to the best that they can, but it's much easier to tweak than it is to create from scratch. And so we have to give them some things to start with. We also have some wonderful purchased curriculum that we use. So I think it's unrealistic that you're going to go either or unless you're in just an entirely virtual school world. But I'm trying to pay attention to the time. I don't want to consume all of the energy in the panel. But I will say one of the things that we learned with our virtual school very quickly, our first year, because our first year, the 2021 school year, we started a virtual school and almost 30% of our kids were in it. And we had so much to learn. But one of the things that we had to learn, we did have a purchase curriculum for K through 12, and it was different pieces for different grade levels. But that the morning meeting, bringing everybody, we use WebEx. So we have morning meetings. And in middle school, they had weekly meetings with small counseling groups and how important those relationships were. And then even though the kids then would go off into the paid curriculum, then the teachers would still have small math groups and then we'd have small reading groups. And then at each week, they had a time in their schedule where they had at least once a week, they had individual parent and student meetings. And that all of these pieces that you would normally do in a regular classroom had to be incorporated, even though the curriculum piece wasn't as much of a concern because we had purchased content, right? But that we still needed our teachers for the social and emotional well-being of children and to make sure we were also paying attention to small group learning and individual learning. So I think we learned a lot in that process. We don't have as many kids in our virtual school this year, but we will always have a virtual school, and that's exciting. We were wanting to get there pre-COVID, and we had this 5-year plan, and we got there in a year because it was an unintended blessing from this pandemic. And so I think that was a really cool thing as well. And I think our teachers learned a lot. A colleague from New Jersey said, Sandra, I think it is, said that it was remote learning at first, and then we're getting to better virtual learning. And so it just took some time for our teachers to learn. And I think there's so many good things we can learn from our friends in the corporate world who are paid to put these things together and to really think about it. And they know these UI, UX design standards. But I think there are some things that we can learn to help our teachers. And because I think for the most part, it's a balanced blend of many things as we move into this kind of new world of using technology to help kids learn.
Yeah, great comment. We're going to have to quote some of that out, right? Just so you know. So I want to go, and Sandra, I know you're chomping up the bit, but there's a lot here for us to potentially discuss, but I want to keep it sort of like at the things you want to discuss, because this is pretty deep stuff, right? And it's probably for your inner circles to really get into more than teachers. The teacher level is sort of like at the top end. So I'm going to come back to Sara, your comments on all this UI, UX stuff, and then I'm coming back to Sandra.
Hey, yeah, I'm just kind of listening and learning a little bit, but I do think I will say that for our school and just kind of looking at this, we've done a lot of work on this. I think one important thing that we've noted is that, you know, being a teacher doesn't mean you're a content designer. And I think that's something that was highlighted during COVID, where, you know, people were thrown into this world, and administrators who aren't really familiar with it either kind of just told them to figure it out. And so we do also, to echo that, we do value that content design is an extra work above teaching. So we also pay our teachers who design courses for us. We have a review process. It's not as rigorous as if you were a paid company, but we go through a review process in which, the content's reviewed by using the Quality Matters rubric. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And then we also have it reviewed by our content specialists at the district level. And then those team of teachers receive payment for anything that is designed as a lesson material or video. So I think that's really important, but also just as a whole, some of these standards I'm reading, I'm just reading through them and thinking like, yeah, these are things we actually built these into professional development. And I think that's one important thing to highlight. Like, I don't know how you get that way, like with all schools, but we started designing this, incorporating this as a part of our professional development opportunities each year. And then we do a monthly lunch and learn where we touch on these subjects. Because I think that to expect teachers to always be like remembering this stuff if they're not like taught it and, excited about it, encouraged as to why it's important. Like, I just think it's maybe, I don't want to say unreasonable, but I just don't think, I think teachers are focused on, their students and teaching. And this is another aspect that you're bringing in. And, you have to help those teachers like merge those things together. So I appreciate this conversation, and I'm already, kind of just soaking up a lot, but those are my initial comments on the matter.
Yeah, because there's a lot here, right? There's a lot here. Nobody's familiar with junk drawer menus and that kind of thing. So I totally get where you're coming from. And I love the comment because that was a major truth. Right? Teachers are not content designers, especially digitally. UI UX is a new world. And it's a different way of directing attention than when you're standing in front of a bunch of kids and you're like, hey, quit pulling that kid's hair, and hey, quit doing this. And then like, get your eyes on the right thing, get your reading done. Right? Totally different when you're digital. It's a totally different world. Okay, so coming to you, Sandra, your comments and all this stuff.
Well, one of the things that I think that's kind of interesting is that one of the things that I have also done for us here, as you were saying about professional development and stuff, we try to do a lot of our content created through our district, because therefore it gives them a sense of ownership being created within the district. So one of the things that we have done basically is like we have created videos that teachers, and we actually have a YouTube channel that teachers can go back to, and they can watch certain videos about how to do this, how to do that, how to do this and do that, and whatever it is. So that way they have the ability to do it. But I think there's also the whole idea behind being content designers and content curators. Because one of the things that I think is also an issue basically is like, I keep thinking about, okay, we keep talking about kids in the middle, and we don't try and look at the kids that are on the higher spectrum or the kids at the lower spectrum or the kids that, because there are going to be kids that need support. And one of the things is I love the idea of what my colleague was talking about, having small groups, and even having, even though it's a digital, it's digital and it's virtual school, having the ability to have still being able to do the small groups, having to do RTI, all these different things within a digital context is something that we need to get teachers to understand and to be able to move forward with. And it's one of the things that I think, by looking at this, talking about, apps and sites, systems should not have poor interface in assessments and testing forms, et cetera, et cetera. We do state testing. And unfortunately, because we do state testing, we tend to try and teach to the test, more or less. Mm. And that's not quite learning. Okay.
No.
Okay. Because learning can be done in different ways. And one of the things that I was looking at the what EdisonLearning was just showing a while ago, one of the things that I always say is that we need to also include speech to text. You know, what happens if a kid is in on a certain, you know, they're in Google Classroom and everything else. Can the kids use speech to text, or can there be a recording for a student that, you know, might have an issue actually typing an assignment or something like that, or, you know, have an issue? Would that be able to be done? Like, we've tried an experiment with using Google Classroom and some kids submitting their assignments via audio. Or what we've done is, like, some kids have submitted their assignment via a video. So they create a little YouTube video or whatever video it is. And that video, even though it may be a group assignment, they submit that as part of the a part of what their curriculum is. And then that's actually evaluated according to a rubric that's done by the teacher. So, you know, those type of things is just some of the things that I find that may be lacking, or teachers not thinking outside of the box on how we can get to all those multiple intelligences and all the needs of all our students. Because, you know, don't forget, every child can learn.
Yeah, love those comments. Love those. So here's my observation is that we've made comments now about, and I'm coming to you, Wendy, next. We've made comments about the fact that we need operational continuity. We can't let everybody do everything they want to do all on their own. So Sandra, like you guys building stuff at the district level, really smart, because then the content's there. The teacher's just sort of fluffing around it. But you can drive, like, every sixth grade teacher's using the same stuff, right? Like, so now we know it's not the stuff, it's maybe the kid or it's the teacher's delivery. It's one of those other things. And then the second thing we really talked about is there is a need for some linearity. There is a need for some predictable routes in order for you to cohort. This group is moving faster than this group. Less attention on this group, more on this group, right? There's a need to do that. And not have the Wild West of everybody going in every direction, right? That doesn't work. So the linearity is important, but those branched paths, here's stuff that to translate for you in 16 other languages. Here's stuff that allows you text to speech. You know, all those little non-linearities are needed to push around that. So Wendy, your comments on all this, because, you know, you've lived in both worlds. The school world, yeah.
It's been very hard to stay on mute this whole time. I just have to say, these comments have been fantastic, and I so appreciate the transparency. I have to go back. I'm looking at my notes, Sandra. I love how you said, you know, we've been screaming from the rooftops about inequity for how many years now? You know, I think 20 years ago we called it the digital divide, right? Now, just renamed it, but finally we're getting some attention, right? Let's help kids. And thank goodness we are getting that attention that these kids need and these families. So I got tickled when you said that, because I was thinking it's education, right? We reinvent the same thing and we call it by a different name. Right. And the one thing I will say that I think is so critical that I don't think should be a burden put on teachers, and this point was made by my colleagues on the panel. Teachers are not trained to design digital curriculum. And by that, what I mean is there are some fabulous products out there that allow us to, and EdisonLearning is one of them, that allow us to individualize instruction and personalize instruction with artificial intelligence for students. So we can differentiate. And that is a tool for teachers. So I could have 20 kids in the classroom, and they could all be getting different types of instruction based on their learning preferences, their skills, and where they are. And as an individual teacher, that's not something I can do, right? I don't have the programming skills for that. And so if there's a product that can do that for me in the commercial grade world, that's fantastic. I can build children's self-esteem. I can give them what they need. And that frees me up as the teacher to be able to facilitate that instruction and do what I need to do. And for me, as a chief learning officer, if I am able to help deliver a product that can do that and allow a teacher to do his or her job and make it easier, then I've met my goal for the day. And I think that's the balance. That's where the commercial grade meets the classroom. On the other hand, I think if a teacher wants to develop a PBL, that PBL doesn't have to look perfect and beautiful and amazing. It's about solid pedagogy and great instruction. And that can certainly be done in the classroom. And that's where that teacher needs to know how to curate. And that teacher needs the professional development that Sara was talking about. And that teacher needs to know, where am I going to get these resources for this, where they're not taking third-party data from my students. And so I think that's where the worlds come together. And you need all of the skills that we've been talking about today. So I think it's been a fascinating discussion. But I think absolutely the commercial grade needs to come together with the classroom. And I just really appreciate the transparency of this group. It's an amazing group. And LeiLani, thank you again for allowing us to be part of the discussions.
Can I just say something about can I make a quick comment about the artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
One of the things that I have found, because I've been actually looking at the background of some of the technical resources that we use inside our school district in order to develop things like benchmarks, like we need more testing. But anyhow, but besides that point, okay, that's a philosophy. My personal opinion has nothing to do with where I work. But you know, when you look at it and everything else, and I totally agree with what Wendy just said, is that being able to use the technology to almost individualize the learning, the way to be able to get that done. It's like one student might need the speech to text while another student doesn't. A student might need, say for instance, as they're reading, the words are not only audible, but they're also highlighted as you're going through. Having that artificial intelligence being able to do that, then also having the ability that when the students does the assessment or whatever it is, it takes them back to the different modalities of maybe how they learn. Is it a visual? Is it an audible? Is it video? Whatever it is. I think that's really important because teachers, as you're saying, it's normally one teacher with 25 kids.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. When I tried to do differentiation instruction when I was a teacher, it was not the easiest thing in the world. And I was just a computer teacher. So, and you know how easy that was been able to do as a computer teacher. But if you're talking about somebody like language arts or math or stuff like that, I don't know how they did it. And I won't claim that I do. But with the new technology, I think we have ability to springboard into what we could do.
Yeah, I love that comment. A lot of back end comments I'm having with programmers these days is about AI, where it's really going. Okay, so final comments, and also from Barbara and Sara, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
My last comment is just as we're doing synchronous and asynchronous PD with teachers, are we modeling what we ask them to teach? Because I think sometimes we don't do that. And so we have tried to be very purposeful in modeling the UI UX things that we think are best practices in our own professional development, so they can see that modeled with the tools that their teachers have.
Yeah, that's key. You know, it's, yeah. We have a tendency to learn by mimicry. We do. Little kids do that all the time. All right. So Sara, your final comments.
Last to join, last to speak. I think I agree with Barbara. I appreciate the comment on modeling, because I think that is very powerful. I think sometimes we kind of, especially with those standards, if you just give those standards out on a piece of paper, it means something different, just like it would to give that to a student. It means something different to give that to a teacher. And so I think modeling those expectations and really giving teachers an understanding of what that looks like is very powerful. And I put it in the chat too, but my final comment is kind of about the curator. That's something we are working on as a district right now is, we have the content building piece, but now we're looking at, okay, what are teachers giving students and how does that look for them? And how are they selecting the things that they give students each day? And, there's so much on the internet that sometimes I think teachers, sometimes they don't give them anything, but a lot of times we look at it and it's maybe too much. It's a little overwhelming. So I appreciate that comment in informing my own, practice and just kind of thinking about how we're designing those opportunities to teach teachers how to be curators of excellent content for students. So,
Sara.
Well, good final comment. So, all right. So, Wendy, thank you so much. Keeley, awesome, because you kind of kicked us all off for sharing, for all your show and tell. So I'm going to just share screen here really quick, do my formal thank yous to everyone. Sandra, you're awesome. I miss you. I wish we could be there in person. We are coming to New Jersey next year, so watch out for us.
And
Barbara,
should I just make one last comment?
yeah,
I am a big advocate, talking about curating, I'm an advocate for librarians.
good.
They are one of the most important resources we should be using in our schools.
I agree.
They know basically how to find those resources, just like was just mentioned, in order to do the curating. And they know how to curate it. It's not like I don't have to invent it. They know how to do it already. So I just wanted, and I'm not saying this because I'm on this talk panel.
Yeah, I think we need to ship them all off to have also not just curation and finding, but also a digital appropriateness, like in terms of lesson time used and when you would stack something in and when you wouldn't. There's like a whole new job range for them. But thank you for that. Barbara, super awesome. I hope to see you sometime in the next year. FYI, you're up for an Edujedi Levels Award, Pickens is.
Cool.
Stay tuned. And Sara, it's good to see you again. Like, it's been a long, long time, and I'm very grateful for your comments. That was awesome. Keep leveling up. Sounds to me like you have been. Keeley, thank you. And Wendy, thank you. Everyone, this has been a great session. Can't wait to get it out to all our thousands of tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of actually readers. And let them know what we just talked about, because they all can learn from it. So thank you all, everyone. And you're free to move about the country now. And thank you so much. See you later.
Thanks, LeiLani.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.